Hi, we're back with the Blue Book at School Participation Requirements, Chapter 3. I'm going to give you the readown on the Blue Book, Chapter Volume 1, Chapter 3. School Participation Requirements, many requirements that must meet the participation in federal student aid programs must coordinate with other school offices. For instance, the requirements adequate staffing, incentive, compensation, prohibition, hiring restrictions located in the misuse government funds must apply to the school human resource office. Similar to the school academic division, the business office business office will need to aware the standard satisfactory provide progress policies, readmission of service members, and institution rates for service members and their families. Administrative requirements of the four financial aid offices, consistent with the information conflicting in the information school must have a system identified resolving discrepancies of the federal student aid related information received by any of the school offices. The school must resolve discrepancy of all students, not just the selected for verification from the resulting, including the determination whether the information correct documentation, school findings, and student file. All school system must include the review. All students' applications need analysis documents, multiple reporting records. The MRRs, potential over awards, POPs from the Common Organization Disbursement System, and the CODs and statements of the educational purpose. The statement of the registration status, eligible notification documentation is presented on the behalf of each of the application. The SAR, ISIR, as student, even if the school is already the verification information of the student's SAR and ISIR, they must review all information subsequent to the SAR and ISIRS. Documentation including the copies of federal tax return, the tax accounting transcription normal collected by the students, and to verify the information received by the students and other sources. And any other information submitted but normally available to the school regarding the student's citizenship, previously educational experience, the social security number, the other factors relating to the school eligibility of federal student aid funds. The Chapter 3 highlights administrative requirements of the financial aid office. Ownership employees can contract with third-party services, incentive compensation, prohibition, required electronic processes, sharing information, National Student Loan Data System, the NLSDS, Federal Loan Services guaranteed satisfactory academic programs, taking attendance, improving the provisions of the U.S. Armed Forces members and families. The record-related information for file standards of Volume 4, Chapter 1, Financial Standards of Volume 4, Chapter 1, Consumer Information, Chapter 4, regarding record keeping and privacy, Chapter 5, and other administrative requirements in Chapter 6. The first Blue Book, Volume 1, Elements of Installation Eligibility, the Federal Student Assessments. The assessment of the school compliance with these requirements of the Federal Student Aid Assessments, multiple modules, automation, satisfactory academic processes at the Information Financial Aid Processing, ED.gov, educational.gov, quarterhouse at Federal Student Aid Assessment, HEML. For instance, if the student receives an academic scholarship for one of the school offices, the office must notify the aid administrator of these benefits to ensure the amounts of the correctly reported the student aid application and or county are accepted with the federal financial assistance for the campus based on the direct loan programs. Other examples: the school admission for the register offices must provide the aid of the information and it might affect the student eligible school, such as the school enrollment eligible programs, the summer classes immediately preceding all fall term enrollments. The school business office must inform the aid office whenever they receive information from the student receiving an outside scholarship. Administrative capability to participate in federal student aid programs. The school must demonstrate the administrative capability of providing the education that promises, properly managing the federal student aid programs. The Title 34 Code Federal Regulation 66816. The district death of a student. If the student dies during the award year, the school is not required to resolve isn't required to resolve conflicting information. The distinction between how long a school needs to be alert and conflicting information, how long it must be resolved in a conflict. Even though the processing year has ended, the school must continue to resolve the conflicting information unless all aid of the period of enrollment has been deemed disbursed all types of the disbursement and the non-conflicting information. The student no longer enrolled in the school and not intending to be and is not intending to re-enroll. Coordinating official definition of capable. Coordinating official is a definition of capable individual that he or she is certified in state in the school is located in the state. Certification is required. Other factors affecting capability, including individual success, completion of the federal student aid program, provided to improve the department in its previous experiences, documentation of success for federal student aid program administration. A school may not ignore the document in its files unless in its files unless the student is no longer enrolled. If there is conflicting information, it must be resolved expeditiously as possible. If the school becomes aware of the conflicting information for a student which is no longer enrolled, there is an aid to be disbursed. The school must be resolved the conflicting before making the late post-withdrawal disbursements. If an aide of the school was unaware of the result received at the end of the period of enrollment the student was intending to be re-enrolled, the aide must be treated an estimated financial assistance for the period of the enrollment just completed with the subsequent period of the enrollment. See these discussion estimated in federal financial assistance and packaging in Volume 3 of the Federal Student Handbook. Remember, at any offices at a school as an information might affect the student eligibility of federal student aid funds, it must provide information to the school designated coordinated official that the person most forwarded the financial aid of the office of the which procedures to place ensure the conflicting information resolved in documentation before the student receives any additional federal student aid funds. Conflicting information. Sources of conflicting information: tax return schedule, federal tax transcripts, other provided by the student financial aid office, supplemental financial aid application, other offices within schools, office of educational institution, not just aid offices, Department of Education, ED is filed as scholarship information outside of the sources, student age of the scholarship, vocational rehabilitation agency trips, extension tips of the outside sources, transcripts of other colleges, SAR and ISSIRs, and verification as in C flags, rejects codes, comments codes. Examples of conflicting information. Conflicting information may include information related to the student's eligibility, such as citizenship status, accuracy, and social security number. The default overpayment status changes in student academic statuses, including grade level progression, cost, attendances, CAOs, elements of other student financial aid, assistant resources, inconsistent information used in calculating student expected financial contribution. The EFC and conflicting information does not include such things as the household size differs from the number of the expectation tax returns, dependency of the IRS rules, and ED of the Department of Education definition of dependency, roster education outside of the scholarship of the imposed of the list of recipients, the privacy protected information such as information professional counselors, chaplains, and doctors, etc. Assumptions may be central processing system CPS is an student who is inspired in immigration documentation secondary confirmation match is successful. The Office of Inspection General referrals. A school must be reported to the Department of the Office of Inspector General. The Office of Inspector General is any credible information indicating the applicant of federal student aid must engage in fraud or criminal misconduct connection with his or her application. The common misconcludes the false claims of independent status and false claimhood, citizenship, use of false identities, forgery, signature, certification, false statements, incomes, bringing the false intent of the deceptive opposed to the mistake if so suspect intent of the purpose of the student reported in the Office of Inspection General by phoning 1-800-MISUSE. The school must also use the Office of Inspection General and any third-party services who may have engaged breach of the fiduciary responsibility, other illegal code of conduct involving the federal student aid programs. If it was appropriate for financial and aid administrator to consult with the school legal counseling, referring suspected causes of fraud, misconduct, agencies outside the school, referrals to the Inspector General and are mentioned in the application verification guide. The Office of Inspector General refers to the 34 CFC 816G. Separation function. The separated the function context of the appropriate school's participation team by the www.eledgecert.ed.gov. Sorry, that's www.eledgecert.ed.gov in the appropriation of the school participation teams for separate functions. Family is defined as individual. Family is a parent, sibling, spouse, child, spouse, parent, sibling, child, spouse. School must designate a capable individual administrator of the federal student aid programs, coordinated aid from those programs of the received student aid of the school, and properly package most effectively various types of the student assist in the federal school and state and the private, etc. The coordinated official must be aware of all the received students attending the school, regardless of the source, creating the student financial aid package to ensure that a student does not exceed his need, and all administrative must include that he is receiving external sources of the institutional aid and a federal student aid program. funds. Therefore, the school operations must be administrated and ensure that all information the school receives that must be affected the student, individual student eligibility, communicated and coordinated officials and a financial aid office. The counseling school must provide adequate financial aid counseling to be enrolled in prospective students and their families. Attending the schools must be also provide insurances existing of the student borrowers in Parkinson-Dirk Act loan programs. For the discussion of loan counseling requirements, see Chapter 4 in this volume, chapters in Volume 6 of the Campus-Based Programs and Handbook for Perkins disclosure requirements. Adequate staffing. To manage the school aid programs effectively, the aid administrator must be supported adequate number of the professional clerical personnel. Number of staff that is adequate depends on the number of student aides, the number of the type of the program in which the school participates, the number of applicants evaluated, the process of schools funds administrated, the typical financial aid delivered to the school, the use while by adequate, the use of one school may be insufficient and at another. The department will determine one of the on a case by case basis. The school may as an adequate number of the qualified personnel based on the program reviews, audited information provided to the school application for the approval and participation of federal student aid program systems and checks and balances. In addition, we'll have well-organized financial aid office staff, qualification, personnel, and school may be ensured to the administrative procedure of federal student aid programs, including the adequate system, internal checks and balances system. Minimum will separate the functions of authorization, payment, disbursement of the delivering funds, such as no single person. Other offices exercise both functions for any student receiving the federal student aid funds. Small schools are not acceptable requirement. Small schools are not exempt from these requirements, even though they must have limited staff. Individuals working in their authorization disbursement may perform on the functions that both the authorization and disbursement two functions must be performed. To the individuals who are not members of the same family who do not together exercise substantial control over the school, as such performs any aspects, functions of the Viva the computer, no one person may have eligible ability to change data at the effect of the authorization disbursement. With the electronic process enhancing accuracy and efficiency, they also can blur separation functions, awarding disbursement occurring virtually simultaneously. School must be set up in the current can prevent individual of an office from having authority the ability to perform both functions. In addition, with the school system having the controls of the preventing the cross-functional tampering, for example, financial aid office employees should not be able to change data elements that are entered in the registrar's office. Finally, the system should not allow any individuals with special security clarifications to change the program that determine the students do not need needs and awards, and should be identified the individuals who make such changes. A third-party service definition: individual, state, or private non-profit organization that enters into the contract-eligible school to administrate the manual automated processing aspect of the school portion in Title 4 and Program 34 CFR 6682. Code of Conduct. School participation in federal student aid loan program. It must publish and enter an enforced code of conduct that includes the bans of renewing sharing arrangements with any lender, steering borrowers into particular lending, delaying loan certification, other funds, the private loans to students, exchanges the provided in succession to promising lender the specific number of the federal student aid loan specified below the volume, preferred lending agreement. The federal student aid priority services Title 34 Code for Regulation 68 1 2 11 14 through 16, 23 and 25, 81 through 84, and 86 and 80 through 89. Subpart H and C. Also the DECL GN 1208, particular information disbursement title funds through the contract. The Code of Conduct applies to the officers' employment and agents of the school that must also prohibit the employees of the financial aid office from receiving gifts or lending guarantee agency or loan services. The code must also prohibit the financial aid offices and other employees and agencies responsibility to respect the educational loans for accepting compensation for any type of the consulting arrangement contracting to provide services to the behalf of the lender relating to the educational loans. Servicing on the advisory board of the mission group established lenders and guarantees except for the reimbursement of the reasonable expenses. Institutional liability. The school remains liable for any of all federal student aid related actions taken on by the service on its behalf. Contractors with third-party services. The school permitted by the contractor of the consultant assistance for the administration of the federal student aid programs. However, the school ultimately responsible for federal student aid programs will be accountable when the consultant mismanages for the of the programs and program funds. The third-party service administrations are expecting aspects of schools' federal student aid participation. Examples of the function of the third-party service performing are processing student aid, financial aid applications, performing needy analysis, determining student age related activities, certification, loans, services, loans, collecting loans, indication, including Perkins loans, processing output documents, payments to students, and receiving disbursement and delivering the federal student aid funds, conducting required student consumer information services, preparing certification requirements as in monitoring reimbursement funds, and preparing submitting notice applications required to the eligible participation, preparing the official operation report of the application to participate, the FISA app, and processing enrollment verification, deferment forms, and national stated student loaded data subject something. Notify the Department of Education of a third-party service contract. This shall be notify the Department of new third-party service contract change the existing contract that is submitted the information regarding third-party services applying to the certification recertification. No additional submission is required. Referring information to the Office of Inspector General, the regulation provided the following example of the criminal misconduct: false claims by schools from the federal student aid program assistance, false claims of the independent student statuses, false claims of citizenship, use of false identities, forgery and signature certification, false statements and income payments of any commission, business bonuses, incentive payments based in any partner directly, indirectly upon successful in securing enrollment to the award and financial aid of any personnel and entity engaged in the student requirement for the admission aid activity of making decisions regarding the award of the federal state administration and federal state aid program funds. See the next section on incentive compensation. Excluded functions. Examples of excluded functions from third parties. I guess this is contracts with third parties. The excluded functions are not considered administrative participation in Title IV program, performing lock boxes, processing load point payments, performing non-electrical fund transfer after being initiated by the school, acting at a these are functions that are not considered administration. The participation in Title IV programs, acting as a multiple data entry processor, financing, compliance, and auditing, mail documents prepared at school, warehousing and school records, participating in written arrangement, eligible school, and eligible determination federal student awards certain to students. See Chapter 2, providing computer services and software. A person organization performing these functions is not considered the third-party services. Is not subject to the third-party services requirements. Annual compliance and audit. A third-party service must submit in compliance to each audited service contracted service year schools. A significant audit submitted with the covers administrative services of those schools for information at www.ed.gov about offices list office of inspector general non-fed etc. student financial aid HTML title 3466 excluded entities. Any employee of the school that is not a third-party servicer for this purpose of the school is one of who is paid directly by the school, who works on full, part-time, temporary basis, performs all duties on site in school under the supervision, is not employed to associate with a third party, is not employed by or associated with the third-party services, is not a third-party servicer for any other school. The school may not have a third-party servicer one that has limited, suspended, terminated, or by the Department of Education within the preceding of 5 years, has been during the service and to most of receipts and audits finding of the resulted services being required to repay the amount of the greater than 5% of the funds at the service administrated under the Title IV programs for any of the year. Has been cited during the preceding of the 5 years of failure to submit audited reports required of the Title IV in a timely fashion. Incentive compensation in the laws and regulations of prohibition incentive compensation impairs the Section 487A20 and the HEA student assistant general provision of regulation Title 3466 814 B 222. The requirements of third-party service contract and under the contract of school third-party service agreements that comply with Title IV. This includes the refer to solely to schools of service is to be jointly service liable school violation services any of the provisions. Service agrees to the Title IV funds and interest in the earnings in accordance with the regulations, disbursement funds, and confirms student eligible, making the required returning to the Title IV funds. Volume 5 of the Federal Student Aid Federal Student Aid Handbook when the student withdrawals. The electronic process, Title 34, 668, 16 DCL General 400408, September 2004, and Federal Registry 9/14/2004, 554815, 55420. In between there, and the difference. And the system that helps with the system help if it helps the question for the specific system application processing of the CPS and the system automated student app. Automated Internet Gateway and the COD and the National Student Loaded Data System. See that the help of the information and financial aid of the personnel is the information financial application. Information and final academic process professionals. ED.gov. A third-party servicer must be referred to the Department of Inspector General in any suspicion crime relating to the Federal Student Aid Program and administration, including the information responsible causing the belief that the school may be engaged in fraud or other criminal misconduct pertaining to the Federal Student Aid Program. For example, the margin on the previous page, and the contract is terminated by the service files and the bankruptcy. He ceases to perform any functions prescribed under the contract. Service must return to all schools that are unexplained with the Federal Student Aid records and related service administrative school participation in Federal Student Aid programs. Incentive composition prohibition. Schools may not provide any commission bonuses or incentive payment based on directly and indirectly on success of securing enrollments or financial aid to individuals or at needs engaged in recruiting or admission activities or making decisions about awarding a federal student aid program funds. No other activities are subject to the ban. Incentive compensation prohibition applies to all individuals responsible for the recruitment and admission of the students making decisions awarding the federal student aid funds. And see Volume 2, Chapter 3 of the Federal Student Aid Handbook for more information. Summary required electronic processing when compliant with the administrative capability requirements of Title 34 Code Federal Regulation 668-116-0. A school must be an EAP submitted to updated school eligibility information. The eligible cert ED.gov and Student Aid Internet Gateway at FSA Web Enrolled at ED.gov. The FAA access of the state Student Aid Internet Gateway mailbox to exchange the FAFSA and is ISIR data for which the Department of Central Processing, as in FFA access ed.gov.fotw web app FAA JSP, or you can go to the Student Internet Gateway portal at ed.gov. The COD website and the State Student Aid Internet Gateway mailbox exchange the award of disbursement data of the Pell Grants, Teach Grants, and direct loans of the COD ed.gov, and also www.saig portal.egov, the eCampus-based ECB system to file the FSIAP application report of the C Volume 6 of the CFIASAP.ed.gov. Submit to National Student Loan Documentation this National Student Loan Data System, NSLDS, the School Federal Perkinson Loaded Data, Student Enrollment Records, the Federal Student Aid Program over the payments, the National Student Loan Data System, transfers the students monitoring records, gainful employment activity programs required, and if applicable, at the NSLDSFAAP.ed.gov. Secure Loan, ASCP, electronically submit the school annual compliance with financial student audits and other required audits. This is the Easy Audit, ED.gov, the Default Management website. Receive the draft official cohort default data electronically. IFAP ed.gov.default management and informational financial aid professional. His website is if referred to the Dear Colleague letters, announcements, and federal regulations at ifap.ed.gov. required electronic processes. Schools must also use the FSA electronic process to consider administrative compatible participation in federal student aid programs. For the school to exchange the federal student aid program, they must have the internet access network and the internet service provider. The school must also need to enroll in the student aid internet gateway established by the data mailbox. Doing this in the text and electronic processing most frequently duty of the third party services. Most schools prepared student data records and software packages in ED Express or transmit the records as a batch file to the student aid internet gateway. The Department of System sends an edited required back to the student aid internet gateway mailbox, where the school downloads the records and uses its software to update the requirements of the database. Schools using the common CODS, common record format, complying with this published scheme, the correspondence award year to the Senate receive the origination disbursement data, the Pell Grants, Teach Grants, the direct loans, common records of the extendable markup of the language XML. Enrollment, the reporting of the Title 34C 682 610 FFEL 64685 direct loans, Dear Colleague, letter G and E 60965, Dear Colleague, letter G 9617, and NSLDS for reference materials, IFAP, and the NSLDSS newsletter updates and other information. Receiving rosters. A school is in service must sign to receive a roster files of the standard student aid internet gateway and enrollment site, the FSA web enrollment.ed.gov PM enrollment index JSIP. To create and edit student records, your student must use the Department of the ED Express software to develop in its own software. Rely on the third-party software vendor. If you're not using ED Express software to prepare all records, and is responsible to ensure the software used in capable recorditions of the common record format or CDS records in XML format. Alternatives, you now create an edited student records directly on the website as is common record documents and CPSs and National Student Loan Data System. When creating and editing records on the web, you do not use PC software and you do not transmit changes that on the web. You do not have PC. You do not use PC software. You do not transmit changes of the student aid internet gateway. Information on financial aid professionals. Program information connected through the information financial aid professionals, the HTTP IFAP.ed.gov, the formal electronic announcements, Dear Colleague letters, federal registered, one of the most useful features of the website, notification services, which send daily, weekly email services, summarize recent posting of the international financial aid purposes. Go to My IFAP or on the web or select a new user registration. If your school is the third-party service to manage uses a third-party service to manage student activities, your school is responsible for knowing all new and statutory regulatory and procedural requirements at the Information Financial Aid Professional website is inconvenient with the comprehensive information. Updating enrollment information, you can create an update in student enrollment in the Enrollment tab of the National Student Loan Data System. Professional access at www.nsldsfap.ed.gov. It support 1-800-99-E2-2019-GOV. The Internet Information and Financial Aid Professionals site also links to all major federal student aid website services and helps and links includes contacts information, federal student aid call centers, and customer services offices. Enrollment reporting of the SSCRs, which is a student status confirmation report for the students enrollment in student status confirmation report, enrollment information of the National Student Loan Data System, including the records layout, error records, see the enrollment reporting of the former student status confirmation report user's guide, which is available on the IFAP ED.gov, the NSLDS for reference materials, NSLDS user documentation. If you use the student status confirmation record of the source package at an enrolling port, see the student source student status confirmation report desk reference, including the the error records of the ETC, and available at the Federal Student Aid at download ed.gov. your minimum system requirements. In the past, the education department has issued the minimum system requirement. School must be participate in the Department of Electronical Processes, must issue issuance from 2005 to 2006, given an optimal configuration: 2.8 gigahertz and 3.333 megahertz processor with an 80 gigabyte hard drive is a fire with a high-speed internet connection. Reviewing the office's computers needed. They should be aware of the system requirements. Processor, RAM, hard drive, storage will depend on the federal student aid of the school. So uses number of the records preceding the school data interface is sharing information with the National Student Loan Data System. The federal student loan guarantors report that student aid enrollment data of the National Student Loan Data System. All schools participating in the federal student aid program must have an arrangement as to the report the student aid enrollment data to the National Student Loan Data System. And through the roster of the formally collected through the roster file formerly called the Student Status Confirmation Report, the SSCR. The student enrollment is extremely information because it is used to determine the student isn't considered, must be removed, and the repayment eligible for the in-school deferment for the students made the repayment out of school status effective to the date. Effective the date determines the grace periods begins and how the student may begin repaying loan funds. All school times during the year, not less than some annual National Student Loan Data System sends a roster file electronically to the school as it designates the server as a student aid internet gateway mailbox. File includes all the school students who are identified in the National Student Loan Data System as Stafford, Direct, FFEL, loan borrowers, beneficiaries of PLUS loans. The file is not necessarily connected to the loans made at your school. It may also report information that which is received from some or other federal student loans of the other schools currently attending your school. Your school's services must comply with the information returned to the roster file at 30 days in receiving it. They may also use National Student Loan Data System at FAPs.edu.gov. The update of the information of the students online changes the student information, the effective date of the status, and in anticipating completion of the records changes the enrollment less than half time graduated rather than reported in 30 days. However, the roster expected within the 60 days you may provide the data of the roster file. The roster file to return the contents recorded the data down past National Standard Loan Data System enrollment reporting edits. Your school will, if your roster return of the current records do not pass the National Student Loan Data Report enrollment reporting edits, your school will receive a response by the file with records that didn't pass. When the 10 days is necessary for corrections needed to pay, made the records and submitted. If your school is unsurfacing and maybe assisting services correct or the errors, and remember the school is ultimately responsible for the National Student Loan Data System or of the student enrollment changes. The enrollment status code to the code listed in the record layouts of the student status credential review. The technical reference of the data submitted by the Student Loan Clearinghouse is using the most of these codes. A is approved for leave of absence. D, C is F the full-time. G is the graduated. H is half-time or more, but less than half of the full-time. L is less than half full-time within withdrawal, involuntary, involuntary. Is W the X is never intended, and Z is recorded record not found. Privacy sharing students' records. The student authorizes his or school to release information to lenders by signing promissory notes as part of the loan application process. For the authorization, the cover of the information relevant to the student or parent eligibility to borrow, as well as locating the borrower. Examples such as the information of the enrollment status, financial assistance, employment records. See Chapter 5 for more information about record keeping and privacy. If your school enrollment data is to the National Standard Loan Data System, if it does not have the complete enrollment reporting roster received directly to the the guarantee agency receiving the enrollment reporting roster for the guarantee agency indicating that the school has not reported to the National Student Loan Data System within the last 6 months. However, you must still respond to the request borrowing information from the guaranteeing agency's lenders and loan servicers. You must continue to provide loan holders and loan servicers with the borrower's enrollment status, other than information needed to locate the borrowers for the deferment and other repayment purposes. Updating borrower information at separation. At 60 days after exiting counseling session, your school must provide a direct loan servicer, a guarantee agency of the FFEL that listed the browser student agencies required records to update information about browser's name, address, references, future permit addresses, school security, identifying addresses, borrowers, expected employers, addresses, borrowers, and next of kin borrowers, driver's license number of the state of issuances. The loan information for the guarantor. Upon request of the guarantor, must inform the schools of the students in default the FVLS. If the lender requests the pre-claims assistance, the guarantor must inform the school of his request. If the school has requested such notification, Title 34, 682, 4040. A4 428C2H Section HEA. The guarantor must notify the schools when loan is made as the school changes hands as the school requests information. Financial aid history. The Title 34 668 19 the DCL Generation 0012 0109 July 21st July 2001 including July 1st 2001 updated. Sharing information to delinquent defaulted borrowers. To promote the loan repayment, school encourages to notify the appropriate direct loan services new information about the delinquent borrowers, location, employment, and work to the default borrowers to bring the loans in defaults. Regular loan services send electronic reports participating in school and delinquent defaulted directly loan borrowers and take out the loan. While attending the school, the report of the contains the borrower names, addresses, phone numbers, organized, and number of the past due to the schools and say the council borrowers, and to avoid the default, show schools be required delinquency reports that the National School Student Loan Data System reviewable online and delivery to the CG mailbox for the borrowers at any DL services. For former FFELL. And may agree to provide holders of delinquent loans and information to delinquent borrowers, location, employment. So the school must also try to contact the borrowers and counsel them to avoid a default. The former FFEL school may also guarantee agencies to provide information to students who enroll in the school who have defaulted and stand for strapped for loans. Guaranteed may not be charged for this information, and the school may also guarantee to notify the school whenever the lender requests for default version assistance of the loan made at the school, provided that the borrower's name, address, and social security number. The guarantee agency must be responsible for the fee of the service to the school. May also information reminding the borrower to repay her loan. Transfer student monitoring. You must verify the eligibility to transfer student loan, federal student aid. You may either check the student financial aid history of the National Student Loan Data System. Professional assets. Wait 7 days for the submitted students' information monitoring to receive the response to the National Student Loading Data System. To begin the information reform feature, designating contact school transfer profile page at nsldsfaap.ed.gov. Satisfactory progress references school policy Title 34 16E, students eligibility 6832F and 6834 Title 34. If your school is requesting the guaranteed agency must also notify your school when loans or students are sold, transferred, assigned, or agent another holder. A notification must include the address, telephone number, the new loan holder. The notification requirement only applies to the loans that are grace period of the repayment only if your school is the last borrower attended before the loan and during the repayment instance. Students receive the Stanford loans and earning the bachelor's degree at your school must pursued the master's degree in another school before the loans enter the repayment. The guarantor is not required to notify that the loans are sold. Financial aid history transferring monitoring. A school that must consider student financial aid history is making federal student aid programs awarded. The regulation requires the school and national student loan data system data and obtaining the information of student financial aid. To receive the student financial aid history, your school must register the transfer monitoring processing their process and NSLDS the monitoring transfer student financial aid history and sending an alert about any relevant changes in aid default overpayment information reported. The post-screen process they may affect the student's current awards. School must be sent as National Student Loan Data System identification information entering online. The student transferring your school National Student Loan Data System can also transfer monitoring to send notification change in the financial aid of the history. Your school may ask information to the student who has expressed interest in attending, even if they are not formally applied to the missions. You can completely discussion of the requirement of the transferring the student monitoring volume 1 chapter 3 of the Federal Student Aid Handbook, which is this right here on Chapter 3 of the Federal Student Aid Handbook. The definitions of tuition rates of military families, Army Force, U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, active duty, full-time duty of the active military service, such as in terms including the including the full-time training duty, annual training duty, attendance while in an active military service school designated as a school by law or secretary of the military departments concerned, such as terms not included but the full-term National Guard duty, active duty during a period of more than 30 days, active duty under the call under order that does not specifically a period of 30 days or less. Satisfactory academic progress. To begin and certain administrative capabilities, the school must have a satisfactory, adequate academic progress that is same as the more strict than the federal student aid recipient school students. As for the students enrolled but the same educational program is not receiving the federal student aid funds. Because of satisfactory progress issues must often raise the specific student eligible cases, discuss detailed satisfactory progress standards of Volume 1, Chapter 1, Federal Student Aid Handbook, which is the first chapter of this book of the handbook, Federal Student Aid Handbook. This is the blue book. I don't know if it's one of the same. I guess it is. I should know that by now. You could review the discussion if there is a school in developing amending the SAP policy. Satisfactory academic progress. Basic element of SAP. The school policy must include the evaluation of at least annually programs longer than 1 year, every payment of the period of the programs 1 year less, and they must qualitative component consisting of the minimum grade point average comparable factor of the measurable against the norm. The program longer, so the two academic policies must stipulate the student must have at the end of the school year the GPA at least 6C equivalent on having the academic standing consistent with the school requirements for the graduation. They must also be a quantitative component with a consistent max time frame, and the students must complete the educational program pace of the completion is ensured that all complete program with the time of the frame. In addition, your school policy must explain the effect of the ESL, which is, I don't know, ESLs, remember the courses of the progress. In addition to school policies, explain how to measure progress and measure the student changes major from SEEKs to if a student changes the major seeks to additional degrees, how to course repetitions to handle whether the appeals have adversely sapped student aid policy determination and procedures for such an appeal satisfactory as in determination proceeds for such an appeal, and if the procedure otherwise reestablishing satisfactory progress. The policy must include the provisions consistent with the application standards of all students categories as full-time, part-time, undergraduate, graduate schools, educational programs established by the school, generally qualitative and quantitative students used to judge adequate progress, including all periods of student enrollment and even the periods of students that did not receive the federal student aid program funds must be counted. Definition of readmission for the purpose of discussion: military services and uniform services Services, whether the voluntary, involuntary armed forces, service as a member of the National Guard, Reserve, active duty, full-time training of the full National Guard duty under the federal authority, the period of the more than 30 consecutive days under the call or already added active duty more than 30 consecutive days of duty includes not guarded in services under the authority that someone who members that applies the member of the perform applies to the perform the obligation to perform since the service is a uniform service and basis of the membership application of the membership performance of the application for the service obligations to performance services. Appropriate officer, warrant commission, non-commissioned officer authorized to search notices military services concerned. Provisions for U.S. Army members and families and state tuition rates for the active duty service members of the family attendance public institutions. A public post-secondary school must not charge a member of the armed forces who is on active duty for more than a period of 30 days more than school tuition rate for the resident of a state. Similarly, the service members of the dependent children are not entitled Similarly, the service members' spouses, dependent children are entitled to in-state tuition rate. Termination of bad conduct is standard. In addition to the service members, spouses, Department of Child Pay pays in-state tuition rates. The public institution must allow that to continue to pay such a rate as long as he or she is continuously enrolled, and if he or she is subsequently changed the permanent duty station of the service members outside state. Termination of the bad conduct. The student readmission of the rights to terminate in the case of dishonorable of the misconduct, discharge, general court of the martial, federal or state prison sentence, or any other prescribed. Readmission of several service members. School promptly readmits the service members within the same academic same academic status that he has had when the last attending school, except for the admission to the school. The requirements applies to the students who cannot attend the school to be due to the military services. The student must notify the school of the military services intention of the return to the school follows. Notification of military service. The student is an appropriate officer of the armed forces, official of the Department of Defense, most given a oral written notice of the services. The school's advancement responsible for under circumstances does not have to indicate whether the student's intended return to the school may not subject to any rule timelessness, and must be determined with the facts of the particular case. If alternately time the remission, the students must be submitted in a attestee station military service necessitated a student in absence of the school. Notice that no notice is required if the precluded the military necessity as the services of operation that are classified would be compromised by such notice. Notification. If the intent of the return of the service, the student must also give the oral written notice of his or her intent of the return of the school 3 year and completion of the period of the service to complete. The student has authorized the compliance due to the illness and injury incurred by the aggravated during the performance services must notify the school within 2 years of the end of the period during the recovery of the illness and injury. As a student who fails to apply to the readmission of the periods does not automatically forfeit the eligibility to readmission of the subjects of the student leave the absence policy practices. A student that must designate once or more offices and students may provide a notification services intended for the return of the student may require that he notifies and follows the particular format. The school must promptly readmit the student if the next classes or classes of the program beginning after he provides notice that intend to and re-enroll unless he requests a later date and unless in the usual circumstances require the school to admit him at a later date. Requirements to proceed to state, for example, the school must readmit the qualifying service member to the next class even if the class is maximum enrollment level set by the state. Okay, responsible effort for helping preparing students. If a school determines a student is not prepared to resume the program, if the same academic status at the point where he or she left off will not be able to complete the program, the school must be able to responsible to have at no extra efforts to help him or her become prepared to enable his or her completion of the program. This includes providing a refresher, allowing the student to retake the pre-test at no extra cost. The school is not required to readmit the student if it determines there are no responsible efforts that can be to prepare her to resume the program at the point where she or her left off and her completeness of the program. That if it makes responsible efforts that those do not place undue hardship on the institution, the student has not prepared to resume the complete and under the program. Resume or complete the program. undue hardship, means of and any action requiring significant difficulty, expense was considered a light overall financial resource of the institution or impact otherwise such action operated in the institution. The school has the burden to provide has the burden to prove the preponderance of the evidence the student is not prepared to resume the program as the same academic status as the point at which she or he left off, which she'll not be able to complete the program. The school must admit the student in the same academic status, which means the same program which the student has limited, or the exact program is no longer referred to. The program is similar to the program unless she chooses a different program. If the same enrollment unless the student wants to enroll in a different enrollment status, the same number of the credit hours, clock hours previously completed, unless the school is readmitted in different program with which the completed credit hours of the clock hours are not transferable. With the same academic standing, the e.g. satisfactory academic progress status the student previously had, the student readmitted to the same program for the first academic year, in which the returns the school must assess the tuition and fee charges, and he or she would have been assessed for the academic year during which he or she left the school. However, the Veterans Education benefits to the service members' education, which will pay the higher tuition of the fee charges for the other students in the program are paying for the year. The school may assess those charges to the students well. If the student's asset is admitted to the different program as subsequent academic for the student admitted for the same program, the school must assess that no more than the tuition fee, the charges other students of the program are assessed for the academic year. The cumulative length of the absence, all previous absence of school military services must not include 5 years. Only to the time suspended actually performing services counted. See the end of the chapter 3 of the volume 2 Federal Student Aid Handbook for additional rules pertaining to the cumulative length of absence is Chapter 4, Consumer Information.